Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good number of times before. I've had some really nice beers from these guys over the last year or two. They are still a relatively new addition to the Swedish beer scene, but I think they're doing some really nice stuff and I would consider them one of the kind of up and coming Swedish breweries at the moment. I would say that they're best known for their different kinds of IPAs, and we have reviewed several different kinds of IPAs from them across the channel over the last little while, and they've always been pretty nice actually, so I do recommend that you have a go of some of them. We've had black IPAs, rye IPAs, New Englands and West Coasts, and they've all been good, so just make sure you check out this brewery if you enjoy those things. But the beer that we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases through Systembolaget here in Sweden, and it is supposed to be a pretty nice beer actually, so I have to say I'm very curious to see how it turns out, because it's always nice to try the new beers from these guys. But hopefully it's another good one, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this beer as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up towards Gothenburg once again, Göteborg as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. Got to get that Gothenburg catchphrase in when we're reviewing Gothenburg beers, because it is just channel tradition these days. We're going to go a little bit to the south of the city, to Kungsbacka, and we're going to have a look at another beer from AKiA Brygghus. So this particular beer is called Stairs and Flowers. It comes in at 7.5% ABV, and this one is a New England hazy, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So this beer was released as part of the local Osmoskalikt assortment through Systembolaget here in Sweden for May of 2022, and I actually saw that on Untappd and on here on the can as well, they're actually listing this one as a double IPA, a New England double IPA, but 7.5% ABV. I think it's right on the edge of what you could consider that. There is that bit of debate between 7.5% and 8%, whether it's a double IPA or not. But yeah, it's got a nice hop profile on it, which we'll come to later, of course. So yeah, let's just crack on with it and see how we go. But always nice to review the new beers from AKiA Brygghus. And as I said earlier, one of the up-and-coming breweries here in Sweden, in my opinion. So check them out. But yeah, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from AKiA Brygghus in the past, and we will no doubt add more to that list in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about AKiA Brygghus. So AKiA Brygghus, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Kungsbacka to the south of Gothenburg, Göteborg, and the brewery was founded by Christian Figved back in 2016. So he had worked as a lighting technician in the music industry, and this job had taken him all across the world. He was a sound engineer for Soundtrack of Our Lives, and he also worked with the Wannadies and Tostrom as well. But he travelled around the world for 8 years, but then he had children and decided that he needed to stay put in his work life, and he decided he was going to take up his old homebrewing hobby and turn professional. But he started off working 20% in the brewery, and he brewed with a 300 litre brew kit, but quickly found this wasn't big enough, and so he upgraded to a 1500 litre brewery in August of 2017, and this took his total brewing capacity up to 40,000 litres of beer per year. Over the course of 2018, he brewed around 10,000 litres, and then he upgraded the brewery again in 2019 to further increase capacity, and then further again with the addition of another 1500 litre brew kit in 2021. But Christian also has a history of letting different home brewers brew at the brewery, and they've actually just hired Victor N to be their main brewer, and I think Christian is going to do more of the kind of business side of things with the brewery actually. But the brewery itself can be found in the old Alfors mill, and the name of this brewery, AKiA, is a kind of abbreviation, if you like, of the full Swedish name of this of this Alfor's Mill, if you like. It has some really kind of old name. I did look it up, I think, when I researched this brewery the first time, but I couldn't tell you what it is now. But as of May 2022, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 60 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and as I mentioned to you earlier, I would say that this brewery are known for their different kinds of IPAs. Yeah, as I said, we've had black IPAs, rye IPAs, West Coasters, New England's. I think we've had a lager from these guys fairly recently as well that was quite nice. And I think I've not tried an Imperial Stout from them yet, so that is something that I need to keep an eye out for. But like I say, quite a highly regarded brewery at the moment. They are doing some very, very nice stuff. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about AKiA Brygghus for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at the beer itself. So I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. As you can see, the artwork on this is pretty nice. It almost looks like, an octopus kind of, it is a staircase of course, but it does kind of look, when an octopus kind of curls its tentacles up. I think that is pretty cool. But yeah, really nice artwork on this one, I have to say. There you can see the AKiA Brygghus symbol, if you like, and you can see it's the old water mill, the windmill part of the the watermill part of the watermill, if we can say that. Brain's not working today, but there you can see it, plain silver top on the can there. It's a 440ml can, this one. I believe it cost me 50 Swedish kroner, maybe a little bit more, but 50 Swedish kroner is about €5, and that's a little bit more than $5 American, because the euro and the dollar are quite similar these days, and it's maybe in the region of like £4.25 sterling for those of you watching back in the motherland of Scotland. But yeah, as we said earlier, this one is a 7.5% New England IPA. They're listing on the can here, it's a double IPA, and it tells us that the malts in this one are Maris Otter, malted wheat, naked oats, and the hops are Nelson Sauvin, Racal and Mosaic, and it's got a WLP 66 yeast. So yeah, all things that we are kind of familiar with here on Rampant Lion Reviews, actually. So yeah, Nelson Sauvin and Racal hops, of course, come from New Zealand. Nelson Sauvin, about 16% alpha acid. It gives you that big, distinctive white, green, grapey sort of thing, maybe a little bit gooseberry-like, you could argue. Racal comes in at about 11% ABV, and that one, from memory, is quite sort of apricot-y and mango-like in its aroma. It's also got a wee bit of a kind of peary thing, if I remember rightly too. But Mosaic is American, 14% alpha acid, and yeah, big tangerine oranges, of course. So yeah, it's been a wee while since I've had a beer with Racal in it, but when I went down to New Zealand in 2015, that was one of my favourite hops that I discovered down there. I'm sure I was drinking something from like Behemoth Brewing Company. It was a Racal IPA, but really enjoyed that. Yeah, so as we say, this one is called the Stairs and Flowers 7.5% New England IPA. They're saying it's a double IPA, and I think it should be very nice. So let's crack it open and we'll see how we get on. Very curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. Let me just get a hold of the ring pull, and there we go. Getting bad at pulling these ring pulls these days, actually. Maybe just getting old. But let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. Been looking forward to this one since I got it, actually. The IPAs that have been released in May this month have been pretty good. We'll leave a little bit of it in the bottom of the can, as we always do, just so we can put some more head on the beer a little bit later on before we drink it. But yeah, anyway, as you can see, this beer is poured exactly as you'd expect for a New England IPA. So before the head disappears, I would say that this one has poured with just under a half finger of a frothy, I would say, perfect white head. You can see it's got some lovely, very small bubbles there. That is just going to fade away to be a really nice, very nice thin foamy layer, of course. There are one or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, but overall it does look very, very nice. In terms of colour, I would describe this one as being a very bright yellow. It's almost like a mango juice. I always like comparing the New England IPAs to different kinds of fruit juices because that's just what the appearance reminds me of. But yeah, remember, the colour of your beer depends on, one, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. The Maris Otter in this, I think, will be one of the things that's giving it that real kind of bright yellow in a sense. But yeah, any The length of your wort boil is also going to play a role as well, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will also affect the colour of the beer too. But yeah, you don't normally have to care about those variables when it comes to a New England IPA. But yeah, the level of haze in this one looks pretty good for a 7.5%er. It's not the soupiest and gloopiest that I've come across, but it does have a fair bit of opacity to it. But remember, the level of haze in these beers depends on 1, the oat content, 2, the wheat content, and the third thing is the yeast to a certain degree as well. And WLP is quite a well-known yeast for these New England IPAs, but you can see, if I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see this thing is pretty damn hazy actually. But yeah, nothing really surprising about this beer in terms of its appearance when you consider what style it is, so I don't think we need to say too much more about that. So let's move on then and have a wee look at the aroma for this beer. So, aroma time. Oh yeah, that smells pretty nice. What I'm going to say straight away about this beer though is that it's not the most kind of punchy aroma that I've come across in a New England IPA. It's actually very, very soft. I mean, first impression of that aroma is that it's got a good little bit of barley malt to it. You can smell it's a really smooth malt base. The juiciness is quite nice. It has a wee bit of an oily character to it, the juicy fruity character, and the green component isn't too imposing either. It actually comes across as being quite soft and grassy in a lot of ways. But yeah, remember there are 6 different things you should think about with a New England IPA in terms of flavour and aroma. You have the kind of yeasty, farmhousey sort of things. You also have the rye, lean and grainy side of it. These two are a little bit more common in American brewed New England IPAs. Although I have been finding a few Swedish beers recently, I've had a little bit more kind of farmhousey yeast to them. But there's also the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, the barley malt bread, and the kind of sweet side of the beer as well. So these are 6 things you should think about when you're trying a New England IPA. But let's delve into this aroma a wee bit more and just break it down for you. So what I'm going to say about this one is it really comes across as being very barley malt and bready like for me. So you can smell a little bit of that kind of fresh bread crust. There's a lovely, very fluffy fresh white bread to this one. You can smell a bit of the wheat thickening this one out, but again, that just serves to, the wheat has a little bit of bitiness at the back of the nose, but otherwise the wheat really acts as a smoothing one in this. I always find with wheat it can either be spicy, it can be a little bit bitey, or it can also be very, very smooth. And in this case, the wheat is really acting, it seems to be acting as like a smoothing agent in the aroma. But yeah, you can smell a little bit of the oaty character in this one, but I think in honesty the oatiness takes a bit of a back seat to the barley malt bready side of the beer. And I think the barley malt side of it is being promoted a wee bit by the fact that there's Maris Otter in there. Maris Otter always gives you this lovely kind of bready and slightly biscuity note to the beer. But yeah, as I say, bread crust, the barley malt, the soft fluffy white bread, you can smell the wheat sitting there just thickening it up a wee bit of small little bit of wheaty bitiness in the back of the nose. You can smell a bit of smoothness and slight sweetness from the oats. They don't come across as overly creamy right enough, and then you get a little bit of that McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing from the Maris Otter in this one. So that's interesting. This beer is kind of doing what I would expect from this malt base, but I'm just surprised at how kind of soft it is. But again, I really appreciate how this one goes about its business. It's very nice. Yeah, aroma wise, this beer comes across really nice. If you sugar it up though, I will point out that you get more of the, if you sugar the beer up a wee bit, you start to get a more pungent green component out of this one. So yeah, just be aware of that. Be aware of that. Yeah, the green component definitely, when you sugar the beer up, it shows you a bit more of a floral side. So I'm getting a little touch of earthiness out of the green component. That's likely to come from the mosaic. But for me, it does have, when you leave the beer and let it settle, it gives you a really nice, smooth, grassy character. But when you sugar it up, it starts to show you a deeper floral aromatic side, which is certainly quite interesting. So I do like how that goes together. Yeah, lovely stuff. So, yeah, I don't think we need to say anything else about the green component in this one. Just remember, the hoppy side of these beers, the green component is often dependent on when you do the hopping. So there's three types of hoppings. Early edition hopping within the first hour, that gives you mainly bitterness. There's late edition hopping within the last half hour of the wort boil, and that gives you a little bit of bitterness, but mainly flavour and aroma. Then dry hopping is completely about flavour and aroma. Early edition, all three are used in West Coast IPAs quite extensively, whereas New England IPAs tend to rely a little bit more on the latter two, but it's not unheard of to have early edition hops in your New England IPA. We should say that as well. But yeah, this one, the more that I smell of it, the deeper that green component gets. So I do wonder if there is a little bit of early edition hop in this one. It'd be interesting. But yeah, let's focus on the fruity side of the aroma to round it off. For me, yeah, you can smell the Nelson Sauvin is absolutely the backbone of this beer. You get that gooseberry, white, green, grapey sort of thing, and I really like how that goes together. Toward the front of the nose, you've got a nice big kind of juicy, you do have that nice big juicy kind of tangerine sort of note out of the beer, which I really like as well. So yeah, you've got that. You do have that nice kind of gooseberry type note to it, which I really like. Yeah, you can smell on top of that, you can smell the Rakow. It's giving you this big, almost kind of like dry apricot jam sort of thing. So yeah, lots and lots of big oily apricot out of this. You can smell, there is a wee bit of a slightly pungent mango in this, I will say that. Right in the middle of that fruity side of things, there is a wee bit of a really bright, juicy mango, but I also get a more oily pear, and that's kind of building in with the Nelson Sauvin. So the Rakow and the Nelson Sauvin in this one are doing some really interesting things. You've got an oily backbone, which is like, a little bit of pear and the white, green, grape, gooseberry sort of thing. But then you've also got that kind of juicy mango type quality to it as well. So yeah, the apricot notes, the dried apricot you get out of it too is also very nice. I'm trying to see if I get some of the orange from the mosaic, but it does come out at the very front of the nose. But as I say, I think the further you go into the nose and the more that you smell of it, it's more the Rakow and the Nelson Sauvin that kind of linger there with this one. But yeah, it's a really nice smelling beer. I have to say, I really like how all of that goes together in this one. So it gets a big thumbs up from me in that sense. So yeah, as I always say, take a wee bit of time to enjoy the aroma of these beers before you get stuck into them. But I think it is about time that we try this one. So yes, guys, this is the Stairs and Flowers, a New England IPA. They're saying double IPA at 7.5% ABV from AKiA Brygghus in Kungsbacka to the south of Gothenburg, Göteborg, up on the Swedish west coast. Let's get stuck into this one. Slange, skål, cheers. That is pretty damn nice, I have to say. Yeah, basic first impression of this one is actually quite a creamy New England IPA. The oats have a good bit more presence than I thought they were going to from the aroma, but it still has that soft white bready character that we're picking up in the aroma. The green component is actually kind of more grassy leaning for sure, and then the fruity side of things is nice and juicy. This is a really, really nice kind of more creamy leaning New England IPA, this one. I like this. Big thumbs up to AKiA Brygghus. And I think this one, the 7.5%, which as I say is kind of in between the New England, between the single and the double IPA, I should say. Again, guys, brain isn't working today. I think that works really, really nice with this particular beer. This is pretty damn impressive, I have to say. So again, make sure you check out some of these AKiA Brygghus beers. I like this one. And the more you drink of it, the more juicy it gets as well. It's really nice. But yeah, let's break this down and describe it a wee bit more sort of in depth for you then. Let's do that. So, the middle third of your palate then, you can feel the backbone of this beer. You get a little bit of that kind of hedgehog roll bread crusty sort of thing. That forms That is your kind of linchpin of the beer, if you like. You do get a little bit of a kind of Jacob's cream cracker sort of thing coming out of this one too, which I can certainly appreciate. So that lingers into the aftertaste too, and you might be forgiven for thinking there are one or two very slightly woody notes toward the front of that middle third of the palate. So I really like that. But sitting on top of that layer, you get that nice kind of fluffy, white bready note out of it, which I really enjoy. So yeah, you've got that nice, you do have that nice kind of fluffy white bready note out of this one, but at the same time I say the white bread is kind of airy and fluffy, but it does feel a little bit dense at the same time too. So you can, I think what's happening is the Maris Otter in this one and the wheat are kind of interacting together and just giving you this really thick but still light feeling white bread, but you can feel that on the top of that layer in the palate it feels a little bit thicker in that sense. And then on top of all of these you've got the oaty side of the beer too, and as I've said to you before, I think oats are a bit of an indicator with regards to how fresh your beer is. You know, the more creamy the oats feel, the fresher your beer is, and the more dry they feel, the slightly older it is. But the oaty character in this beer, you can feel down the middle line of your tongue. It's got this big kind of creamy side to it, which I really like. So that works together. That works really nicely, in my opinion. Yeah. Aroma wise, flavour wise, getting brain not working. Flavour wise, this one is really nice. That oaty side of this beer is really lovely. So you get that big, thick, creamy oaty character right down the middle of the line of your tongue. But as you move further out toward the edge of your palate, it does show a little bit of it does show a little touch of dry oaty character, and within that you get a little ring on top of that oaty layer where it's like a McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. So I do enjoy how that goes together. But yeah, I think the middle third of your palate in this one is really nicely done. I think this beer, it really just ticks the boxes for me. I like the breadiness and the barley malt side of things, and it's the thing that's nice about it is you look at the ingredients list that's on this and you can pick every one of them out. There's not one that's being kind of subdued by anything else. You get a really nice blend of things going on in this beer. So I think if you were to try this one, you will enjoy it for sure. I think this is just a really solid on one of, I can't remember the last New England I had from AKiA. The last one we had, of course, was the collaboration, but I'm thinking one of their own beers. I think it's been a wee while since I've had a New England from them, but yeah, as I say, it's one of the breweries that I keep an eye out for when it comes to the local releases. So, yeah, I don't think we've got anything else we need to say about that middle third of the palate. So the border region between middle third and back third of the palate, and again you feel a little bit of a bready build-up in there, a wee bit of bread crust. Then the base of that back third of the palate is a wee bit more bread crusty again, and you do get a slightly more grainy, and you do get a little bit more of a kind of grainy and crackery character out of it. But sitting on top of all of that, you do have a more you do have a little bit of a more you get that kind of dense bready character out of it for sure. You can feel that that's there, but again the bready character just feels that little bit more grainy. Remember, the more bitter grainy flavours come out toward the back of your palate, whereas the sweeter flavours come out further forward. So that is definitely worth bearing in mind with this beer. But you can feel that bready layer is a little bit more dense, and it's also just a little bit taller in the back third of your palate. So yeah, you've got the bread crusty, you do have a little bit of that bread crusty crackery note, a taller and slightly denser fluffy bread, and then on top of that you can feel a little bit of the bitiness of the wheat in this one, which is nice. Then on top of all of that you can feel the yeasty side of this beer. So the yeasty side, it feels like a slightly more dense, doughy bread that you get out of it, but at the same time you've also got that you also have this kind of just crackery and slightly woody kind of note to it as well. That slightly farmhousey vibe to the beer, so that lingers into the aftertaste as well. But yeah, definitely on the back third of the palate you can feel the flavour is taller And as you come into the middle third of the palate, as you always expect, it just condenses down a wee bit, and that's where you get these nice. That's where you can feel the kind of real smoothness and creaminess of the beer, of course. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty and yeasty side of it. Let's focus on the hoppy side of this beer. So for me, the hoppy side of this beer, in the back corners of the palate, then you do get a wee touch of earthiness in this one. But as you move further forward, it does develop a little bit more of a floral aromatic sort of thing, but it's quite a bright and slightly wet floral aromaticity you get from this one. So I think this beer, just going by the way it is, you don't have such a big depth to that green component. I think this one is really more relying on late addition and dry hopping, actually. So that's worth that is definitely worth bearing in mind with this beer. But round the front curve of the palate, you've got a little bit of a lighter grassy sort of thing, which I do enjoy, and the grassiness is a little bit wetter too. So yeah, keep that in mind with this beer. This one is really nice in its green component. It's got that big kind of wet floral note, and I think the floral character actually does get a little bit deeper the further you go into the aftertaste, but the grassy side of it has a wee bit of depth as well. But yeah, the green component for me is quite wet in its nature, and slightly oily too. So yeah, don't think we need to say anything else about the green component in this. It does take a back seat to the malty, yeasty side of the beer and the fruits as well. But let's focus on that front third of the palate and the fruity character in this beer. So yeah, the malty, the border region between front third and middle third of the palate on this beer then. So the you can feel in that border region there is a little bit of a kind of bready build up in there, a wee bit of bread crust. Then the base of that front third of your palate is a little bit more of a kind of soft white bready. It is a little bit of a more kind of soft white bready character that you get out of it, and you can feel there is a little touch of a kind of crackery, Jacob's cream crackery sort of note under there too. But on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters roll their way out of the beer. And for me, this one's interesting because I think the Nelson Sauvin, on the fruity side of things, the Nelson Sauvin is kind of forming the backbone of that whole front third of your palate. So you've got that gooseberry, white green grapey note there. But then if you go toward the back half of that front third of your palate, you go toward that, it's got a little bit more of a it has a little bit more of a you get the kind of oily apricot note out of it. You can feel the kind of dry apricot, and then sitting on top of that you get the nice juicy mango. So yeah, on the back third of your palate you've got the gooseberry, white green grape, you've got the kind of drier apricot, then you've got that more juicy, slightly oily that slightly more juicy oily mango note, and that's, you know, so it's the Nelson Sauvin and then the Racal that's kind of sitting on top. If you go into the front half of that front third of your palate, you've got kind of similar, you can feel the Nelson Sauvin, and it sort of becomes more of a gooseberry flavour on the front in the front part of the front third of your palate. And then on top of that you're getting a more oily peary sort of thing. Then there's a nice big kind of juicy bright orangey character to this one. So yeah, I really like how this beer goes together on the fruity side of things. I'm just trying to remember if I have had Racal in a New England IPA before. I must have, but when I first tried it, it was in a West Coast IPA. But it just goes to show you, it does still show its really nice oily character in the New England as well. And I always enjoyed the New Zealand hops. They were always quite interesting because quite a few of them were lower alpha acid, but they still gave you these big fruity components, you know, Riwaka, Racal, Kohatu. Yeah, there's loads of them. The New Zealand hops are really, really lovely actually. So nice to see Racal making another appearance up here in Sweden actually. But yeah, I think that's all we really need to say about this beer in terms of its flavour. So let's round off with a wee look at the mouthfeel then. So for me, the mouthfeel of this beer is, I would say it's quite I'd say it's right in the middle of the spectrum. It's mid-bodied, the carbonation is very smooth. The beer does have a little bit of a wetness to the mouthfeel, but it's also kind of creamy at the same time. It's quite creamy and smooth, so I like that about it. In terms of IBUs, I think it's a standard 25-30 IBU beer. It's a very low one. This, and I don't think the green component is quite as pungent in this New England as it has been in some of the other ones that I've tried. The malt base, as we said, is really lovely and smooth, and it feels very, very creamy. There's a little touch of sweetness to it as well from the Maris Otter in there, which I do enjoy too. And then the fruity side of things I find quite oily, but there are little elements of dryness to it as well. But the fruity side of things in this one I think is very nice. But as you know, I'm a sucker for New Zealand hops. Racal is one that I always used to enjoy, as I've repeated a few times in this video. But yeah, I like this one. Very impressed with AKiA Brygghus. Once again, this is definitely worth trying if you get the chance. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. This one was the Stairs and Flowers. New England, they're saying double IPA at 7.5% ABV from AKiA Brygghus in Kungsbacka. I was going to say Kungston there, in Kungsbacka, just to the south of Gothenburg, Göteborg, up on the Swedish west coast. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from AKiA Brygghus as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the near future. In the meantime, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Slàinte just now.